Conversation with Ron MacLean.
Welcome to In Conversation. Today on our show, we're pointing ahead to the Sunday, June 21st celebration of National Indigenous Peoples Day, which is a celebration of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, the diverse heritage, the culture, the achievements. And we're really thrilled to have as guests Nicole McCormick. A real Indigenous ring to that name, Nicole. And I'll get you to explain, you and Waneek Horn-Miller, your true Indigenous clan and name here in just a moment. But two great representatives to speak to Sunday's celebration. I am wearing a Mississaugas of the New Credit t-shirt, which I received from the then Chief Brian Laforme. Chief Stacy Laforme, no relation, is now Chief there. And it was actually with Waneek that I did a circle dance, a friendship dance in anticipation of the Pan American Games in 2015 and received the t-shirt. And I think Keith Morgan got one and Waneek got one as well. And the current Chief, Stacy Laforme, a huge presence in my life and a dear friend of Nicole McCormick's. Nicole's story is she is the managing assignment editor at City TV News. So she has helped us with Rogers Hometown Hockey. We had the first ever broadcast from a nation, Cree Nation in Edmonton, Enoch Cree Nation, took place 2 years ago. And Nicole, along with Chief Stacy Laforme, kind of helped us shape how we do the show. They did a 30-minute webcast in anticipation of the show, and then that telecast itself was simulcast on APTN and was nominated for a Canadian Screen Award. So we truly appreciate what she does for us. And when she's not moonlighting with us, her role at City TV News has netted her Canadian Screen Awards as part of the team there. So she helps to shape the coverage with respect to the lead story. She deploys the questions, the cameras, really big role that she plays for City TV News. And while she's attacking the lead on the next newscast, the leader of the attack is Waneek Horn-Miller. Phenomenal swimmer as a youngster. She won provincials in a number of disciplines. She was also a great track and field runner. And it was almost the perfect storm when she took her speed from the pool and the track to water polo. She became a great player, led Canada to a gold medal at the Pan Am Games in 1999 in Winnipeg. They went to the Olympics in 2000. She was a co-captain of the team that finished fifth. She was fantastic, had a hat trick in a game against the Americans, and that team was really kind of the talk of the Olympics, or one of the big subjects. Then they went and won a bronze at the Worlds in 2001, and for her great athletic career, she is in Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. But both women are tremendous advocates for Indigenous rights, women's rights, human rights. I can safely say neither would you want to tick off, nor is those who they represent just a box to be ticked off.
Waneek Horn-Miller has been an emblem of the Mohawk Nation for more than 30 years. Waneek is 24 when she helps Team Canada win gold at the Pan American Games in 1999. The Mohawk girl from Ganawake is an Olympian, channeling 500 years of history for her people and for herself. She remains one of the most respected Indigenous persons in Canada, Waneek Horn-Miller.
So here we are, and rather than me introduce, it's really lovely to have the two women introduce. So Nicole, you first. Give us your name, your clan.
Well, Sego, my name is Nicole Longboat McCormick. I am Turtle Clan. I am Mohawk, and I'm from Six Nations of the Grand River in Oswego here in Ontario, not too far outside Hamilton. And I'm just so proud to say it is Canada's biggest reserve and home to 26,000 people. So it's a very proud place to be.
And Waneek.
My name is Waneek Garaquinuta Onatgarayete Sunshine Horn-Miller, and I'm a Bear Clan woman from the communities of Ganawage and Oswego. My father's from Oswego as well, and I grew up in Ganawage, but also in Ottawa.
Miigwech Shutu, and this T-shirt I was saying in the preamble, Waneek, I think Keith might have received your husband. How is that Heinz 57 from Calgary doing, Keith Morgan?
He is working, as doctors are now. I mean, he's out there. He's a sports doctor, right, as well as a family physician. So he's out saving the world one joint at a time, he says, today anyway.
Four-time Olympian, four-time Pan Am judoka, amazing Keith Morgan. So listen, both of you, I know, like all of us, have been reflecting. Nicole, you said we had Jordan Banks as our president of sports and media, and he asked many people who have championed intersectional justice to pen a note to him to be used internally. But it would have given you the opportunity to think a lot about what you might like to say. So why don't I just open the floor to you to speak about that?
Well, first of all, it was a pretty big deal for me to be asked to send these notes and to share my feelings with Jordan and our management. Just because it's been a fight over the past few years to have Indigenous people, recognized on a daily basis. In our company, and I'm so proud to say that the company is trying really hard to show people like me and the other Indigenous employees of the company that we are important, that we are, that our voices are being heard. And, within that note, I gave him some history because, as we all know, education is really important right now. And I gave him some history as to why Indigenous people have long been suffering from systemic racism in this country, whether it is residential schools or the 60 Scoop or Missing and Murdered. I gave him that education because it was really important for me to go on and to explain why, growing up, I always felt that I was invisible in the media, or anything that you saw was always negative. So I really wanted him to know that, we need to do better work in acknowledging the fact that Indigenous people are fighting every day to be acknowledged. We are fighting for our lives in a lot of respect, and we deserve to be acknowledged as human beings and as people with real voices in a large company. And the recruitment efforts have to be upped because our numbers are not as strong as they should be in a big corporation. And so I laid it all out for him, and it was really well received. And I truly believe that he is committed, and that Rogers is committed to doing better, to giving us a voice, and to having us acknowledged and our culture and our language on a bigger scale.
Waneek, you take it from there.
Well, I mean, I can only say I can't speak from within the CBC, but I know within the sport world, obviously, what's been happening south of the border has started a conversation with the Black Lives Matter movement and talking about race. And one of the most frustrating things is seeing how a lot of Canadians were looking down their noses at the Americans, going, "Oh my, oh my God, look at those people! Like, how barbaric!" And oh, Trump is threatening to send in the military. Oh my God! And I'm like, wait a second. You guys sent in the military into my community. You guys, I distinctly remember watching television, watching the Prime Minister call us terrorists. Not just one person, the entire Mohawk Nation was dubbed terrorists. And for many years, we were on the terrorist watch list. So crossing a border was very problematic. I remember getting my first passport, even to go on my first national team trip was an issue. There were issues around that and who I was and where I was from. And so, I look at the issues here in Canada, and one of the things that I really like to point out is, like, what people often will say, it's systemic racism. But to be perfectly honest, I don't think Canadians know what systemic racism is. Like, we have to drill down deeper into what that means and to how it affects people. And I know how it affects people in sport. If you are a person who is in a culture, in an environment where you are the other, you come from a different culture, you come from a different way of being. I mean, as Mohawks, our system of government and society is very different. We are not a hierarchical system. We are very much like everybody has a voice. And, so we act different. Women are empowered in our culture. We act very different. And so when you are dubbed, especially in a team sport, when you are dubbed too problematic, like, the sport world loves you as long as you get the attention. Like, that difference is kind of sexy and exotic until the difference becomes a problem when you start actually speaking about what you think is wrong, what you think is, and human rights are very important to Indigenous people. We are extremely sensitive to it. We are sensitive to human rights abuses across the board, whether you are Indigenous or Black or Muslim or LGBTQS, like, it's all interconnected and we need to fight for it. And so, I experienced that in my sport. And now that I'm on the other end, I feel it's even more important for me as an Olympian, as a mother, as somebody who has a platform, to fight for the current athletes so that they don't have to end their career like I went through because I spoke out and I had nobody backing me up. So
Well, yeah, let's stay with that for a second. Hang on, Nicole, because obviously there was about four things brought up there. The fact that you fought at Ganawage, the idea of marry out of the reserve, then you get out. You're not allowed to live in the community. You fought that, which is going against your own, which is incredible. Certainly, there's the idea of Oka 1990, you being stabbed by a soldier. So you watch a little differently through a lens that separates. But that last point, you were subject to quite a bit of ridicule when you were you tell me what happened when you left the national water polo team. Former captain, former world bronze medalist, former co-captain at Sydney, etc.
well, I mean, when I there was abuse on our team, and we were many years before the safe space movement that you're seeing within sport. 17 years before, and I remember when it was happening. And looking back now, I look back from very different eyes, and I see how it was mismanaged and how the whole post-Olympic, even stress and depression and stuff like that, was not managed well, and they
Mhm.
didn't understand, and it was there was abuse on our team. And so I felt really strongly. I'm raised in a culture where you don't allow your sisters to be abused. You just don't do that. You stand up, you say something. And even talking to my mother, I mean, I could have gone and got a professional contract to play in Europe, and really stuck my head in the sand. And she told me, she said, that's not your role. You were put in the position of a co-captain, and in our culture, that's a position of a war chief. You are supposed to fight. You are supposed to protect. You are supposed to do something about it. You are now in the position of a veteran on the team. You need to use that position to make it better. And so, we were ridiculed, like myself and my other teammates who did stand up. Oh, I wasn't alone. And the media destroyed us because the sport world in many instances is like it's like 30-40 years behind mainstream society. Like what coaches were allowed to do and say, oh well, you're just not tough enough. We were always compared to the men. You're just not tough enough. You just can't deal with it. And I just said, I just can't take it anymore. And when you see team players leaving a sport damaged, hurt, and like it's going to stick with them for the rest of their lives, I felt that was wrong. And so we did push it. The coaches, there was an investigation brought in, and they found that what we had, if the coaches weren't removed, then the Water Polo Canada would be held criminally responsible for what the environment we were living in. And so my career didn't last much longer after that. Because suddenly, I remember being sat down and being told, Waneek, you're no longer in the team because you're a team cohesion problem. And with that, I said, oh my God, like my whole life, like your otherness has now become a problem. Your otherness wasn't a problem when you were on the cover of Time magazine or you were the poster girl for the Roots campaign. Your otherness was not a problem, but now it's a problem because you now are you're being critical of our system, which we allowed you to be part of. Do you know what I mean? And so I didn't take it. I went to see a human rights lawyer, and Clayton Ruby out of Toronto, who had helped us during the Oka crisis. And I sat down, I said, something's wrong here. I know this is wrong. What is it? And I explained the whole thing to him, and he says, yeah, that's discrimination. You're being discriminated against because you are acting absolutely culturally predictable. If you know what a Mohawk is, Mohawks do not back down from human abuse. They don't. And so I did take it to the alternative dispute resolution. I pushed all the way, and I had to sit across from my entire team, entire Water Polo Canada, except one player was on my side, my friend Renee Soriol and my uncle. And I had to explain the whole thing. And I explained how the system of, telling someone you're a team cohesion problem, I said, you need to explain what I did wrong so that I don't carry that on to my future life. What did I do so wrong that I'm now a problem? And, and some of the players actually looked at me and said, are you calling me a racist? Like they were so angry that I was saying this. And I said, I did this for you. I fought to protect you. all of you, you don't understand this, and when I left the team, I never got a call from anybody. Are you okay? Nobody in Water Polo Canada, nobody in Sport Canada, nobody anywhere said, Waneek, are you okay? I went back. I'm lucky. I come from the indigenous world, and I was just enveloped in the love of my people. And they said, well, you're home now, and we're going to take care of you. And that's what basically happened.
Well, thank you for that. Go ahead, Nicole. I won't ask a question. I'm sure lots comes to your mind with that.
Waneek, I guess that's the one thing I struggle with, now as a journalist as well. How did you balance that? Like, you and I are both Mohawk women, and obviously I know there's strength within me that comes out at certain times, but trying to balance wanting to speak out and fight as hard as I do. I tend to do it more, internally, like with Rogers or with people, but I'm trying and struggling to have a more open voice when it comes to certain issues just in my daily life, so that I'm not seen as, breaking the rules, if you will, when it comes to being a journalist. So how would you suggest, how do you balance that? Like, maybe you can throw some words at me, because just hearing you speak and wanting to just take it farther, that's what I want to do too.
Well, it's interesting, because the recent article that was written in CBC about that experience by Devin Haru, it opened up the conversation with Water Polo Canada. They approached me and they said, we want to do better. We want to acknowledge what happened. And like I've been raised traditionally, and a really important concept in our culture is Gananu, like the place of love that we're supposed to come from. And ultimately, I had to get back to that. I was hurt and I was angry, but I got back to who is Waneek. And she's a woman who spreads love of her people, love of her teammates, making things better. And I use that power of love to infect other people within the sport world to understand that it is a loving and caring and a human way to treat other people. Being treated like the other, excluding, in the end is only going to hurt the program itself, because I believe that Canada will never ever reach its greatest Olympic potential as a country until they understand that diversity is a strength and a need to start embracing it, cultivating it, and including everybody in this country in the programs. But that's not happening because sport is not accessible. Mm-hmm. You have money. You have to live in certain places. You have to have access. And that's just not the way it is. And in the end, I believe that, I even look at the bigger picture at the whole concept of reconciliation, since 2015, Prime Minister says, we're living in the time of reconciliation. And I'm like, but there's no tools to teach reconciliation. What does that mean? And how do you teach people to embrace difference and diversity if we don't have things like sport become a cornerstone of nation building? And so I really kind of look at the larger picture like that. And I believe that, the traditional teachings of love, but also humility, being able to listen. My 44-year-old self is a lot better at it than my 24-year-old self. Let me tell you, I was punch first, listen later type girl back then. Now I'm like, okay, I know what I ultimately want from you. And I want you to love this vision that I have, and this vision of making things better. And nobody can disagree with me when I lay it out like that for our children, for our grandchildren, that they don't have to inherit a country that is broken, that not everybody gets to experience things like clean water or safety, so, that's something that I try to do. I do get angry though. I get angry, I get frustrated. But I'm not as, I have mellowed a little bit in my ability to understand how to redirect that than before. And I know how to verbalize it better these days, but I don't ever stop fighting. My fight is always, but you know what? I realize I need a team to fight, and I need allies, and you need to go and cultivate the allies amongst your colleagues and right across the board in the media world. So.
Nicole, you've done before I get to what you've done to help educate, to spread that love that you have for this, what was just mentioned by Waneek. What's your story? I mean, in the case of Waneek, her mom, they go to Ottawa, and she, eliminates all vices and just focuses the girls, 4 girls who all are, doctors, professors, actors, and Waneek, Olympian, amazing. What's your story? How did you? Because the truth of meritocracy till now is meritocracy is you fit in. You find your whiteness, you find your Canadian, and you'll be okay with us. How did you do it? You.
For me, I come from a very, stereotypical, and I hate to say this, stereotypical or perception of what people have as Indigenous people. My mother was a drug addict. My father left before I was born. So I had always felt abandoned. I was put in the system at a very young age. And I've struggled with that to this day. For the first 6 years of my life, when you're supposed to be, learning basic skills like love and like hugs. I didn't get that, in the first, in that most important part of my life. But, it all changed, when I turned 6. A man entered my life who, saved my life. A non-Indigenous man. He adopted me at a very young age. He was young, I was young, and but he showed me the love. He turned my life around and showed me love. He showed me how to live independently. He always told me I was Indigenous and that one day I would learn what that meant. And he tried. But it was when I became more of a teenager, when I really started to get immersed in my culture, started going to powwows, started, reading and learning for myself, seeking out, elders, seeking out family members on the reserve who could teach me more. But I had always struggled with my Indigenous identity. I always had, this feeling like I had been missing something. For so many years, I was missing something. And then, up until a few years ago, I just felt that empty piece. And then something fell into that space when I was introduced to friends of mine at the Downey Winjack Fund. And what had happened there, it was they approached us with a conversation about their legacy space program. And I wanted to learn everything about it. Obviously, I know Gord Downey. I know, the story of Cheney Winjack. And as soon as they told me about this legacy space program, I was like, this is it. This is what I can do to change the world. And I did. I took it to Rogers, got the whole business plan in order. I did it all how I thought I was supposed to do it, presented my plan, and they gave me the biggest boardroom in the Rogers headquarters to change into the most beautiful educational space. There is representation from residential school survivors, our youth, our veterans, artists. It's just the most amazing space. And it is a product of my love and my dedication to our people, to my, to just wanting to make a difference. And I wanted every part of us to be represented in that room. And every time I go there now, it's my safe space. And that's what it is. It was supposed to be a safe space where people can go, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, to learn about our culture, to read on their own time, and to just feel what that space is. And remember that we have a lot of work to do. Like Waneek said, we need allies. And that space was kind of what changed my world, and to come to, for me to figure out what my purpose is, and that is to educate others about us.
And it's been incredible. And you've got a series on City TV right now honoring a profile each day for the month, and obviously pointing to the June 21st celebration. There's so many books, Waneek, I'd love to point out, but this is Jody Wilson-Raybould, who kind of left Justin Trudeau's government because she was frustrated that the Indian Act wasn't torn up when she thought it should happen. I could show you. This is Ann Wortham. Another makes me think of your mom, Canada. This is Ann Wortham, a prof at Illinois State, just retired, but she used to talk about Black victimhood versus individual responsibility. And her basic thing was not to paint us as, victims, which doesn't that sound like your mother? So, this is a day to celebrate First Nations, Inuit, Métis, not on the basis of pity or sympathy. And certainly in your household, I mean, it's all excellence. So it sounds easy, but I'd love your view on that. How we reconcile that, we'll get to you eventually.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, and this is what I understand. I look at the average Canadian, and when things like the Colton Boushie case happens, or the shooting out in New Brunswick, or the death out in Mi'kmaq territory, and when you you hear Indigenous people scream with rage, like rage. That is like, it's almost, I feel like Canadians are deaf to it. They're desensitized to it. And it's that arm's length kind of thing of like, I didn't do anything to those people. It's not my responsibility. And the way Indigenous people look at it is like, when we start seeing the regular Canadian who doesn't have a Native friend or doesn't somehow have connection to the community, stand up and say, this is wrong, and this is not how I understand what it means to be Canadian. When we hear them scream and rage that this is a violation of human rights, then we will start to understand that we could potentially be part of this society. And, I that's how I come across. I often ask Canadians, what does it mean for you to be Canadian? You have to start personalizing these things. You have to, when you take that drink of clean water, you have to remember there's over 100 communities that don't have that. Is this what it means to be Canadian? And when I said, it doesn't take, we have to start finding our common humanity with each other. And as Indigenous people, the things we are not victims. We are survivors. We are never going away. We are never, ever, ever going away. And we have a young generation who we want to grow up to be empowered and emboldened and full of love and full of energy to make this place better. And the last place I want to see them is on the front lines of a barricade. I look at the protests that happened with the, Wet'suwet'en protests, and I look at the young people and they're angry and they're mad. And I'm just like, no, that's who I was when I was 14, 15. I don't want them to have this. But right now it's like, we are trying to get Canadians to understand we are fighting for you. We are fighting for the water and the air, and we are fighting for our children. Join us, stand with us. And more, like over the last 30 years, it'll be 30 years this summer that Oka broke out, that the crisis broke out. Back then, we were the enemy number one. But now when I look at what's happening in, the Wet'suwet'en protests and also the Black Lives Matter protests, many, many people of different backgrounds are standing. And that's what I mean about allyship. And as an Olympic athlete, and I look at my role as an Olympic athlete, I look at other Olympians like Clara Hughes, Perdita Felician, Mark Tewksbury, even Donovan Bailey now speaking up. I'm like, this is our role as these people who every 4 years would find a way to unite people together. Every Olympics, everybody drops their differences and cheers for 2 weeks for these athletes who are giving everything. And we are emboldened by that, and that job doesn't stop once those Olympics are over. Our job still continues today. And you know what? I am empowered, and I have a sisterhood, and I have, a team amongst Olympic athletes who have always given me a platform. Like, it's interesting to see, like when I was a deputy chef de mission in Toronto, they were encouraging me, do it, go, get out there and say what you have to say. So, do I see change happening? Yes. Is it fast enough? Never fast enough. Will I ever stop fighting? No. But will I ever rescind my hand from someone who's willing to meet me and take that hand and work with me? I will never rescind until the day I die. That is my.
You had a great story about your mom and Jean Chrétien when you were at the On the Podium event. I don't know if we'll have time to get to that. I want to say, Nicole helped us with Rogers Hometown Hockey at Enoch Cree Nation. She engineered how we did the first show, got us a nomination for a Canadian Screen Award, and then we went the next time to Peguis First Nation. And Glenn Hudson, the chief, worked in the oil patch. So he's in engineering. He's a specialist in oil and gas, and he's the chief of Peguis First Nation. So the blockades are happening simultaneously. And I have the elder Gary McCormick telling me about, look, Ron, it's just the duty to consult. It's a very simple thing about nature and your great ability in the oil patch, and together we can do some good here. It was amazing enlightenment. So then that's what you've been doing, Nicole, is shedding light on so many here with your City TV profiles. Tell the viewer a bit about that.
So what I wanted to do, Ron, I wanted to celebrate Indigenous people. And what I've asked is for people that I grew up admiring and people who were who inspired me, I wanted to be the conduit for their stories. So I asked them all to send me a personal Indigenous Month message. I would write a little article, a little bio about them, and we posted it on citynews.ca, and I've posted it everywhere. Let's be honest, my social, the Rogers platforms. I want everybody to know about these people. And the response has been so amazing. There is a thirst out there right now for knowledge and for, inspiration, to be inspired by people who they didn't know about. I introduced them to Arthur musician Tom Wilson, who at 53 found out he was Indigenous after living a whole life of not knowing who he was. People like Tom Jackson, who everybody I think grew up watching in this country, who, he said the most important thing to me was, I told him I sometimes feel very alone, even when there's a whole bunch of voices and a whole bunch of people who love me and who are supporting me. Sometimes I do feel alone. And he said to me, "You're never alone." He's like, "Just walk outside, take your shoes off, and go stand on Mother Earth. Let her feel you. And you feel her, and just let the spirit just absorb into you, and remember that she's taking care of you." And it was just those thoughts and those inspirations from these people that just got me thinking that we are all on our own path and we're all on our own journey. And Waneek, I actually saw this on your Instagram. It was something that stuck with me because sometimes I always feel like I need to rush myself, right? Like I'm not where I feel like I should be farther along. I should know more. But, Tom also told me, you are where you are supposed to be right now in your journey. You're being guided. And when I hear that, and when I know that, and when I hear that from people that have inspired me for so many years, it makes me feel less alone. And Waneek, you are one of the first people, I have to tell you, who showed me, I was 11, during Oka, but that was the first introduction that I really had to how passionate our people are for us, for our land, and protecting each other as well. And for me growing up, you were just always one of those people that I knew about, and I knew your strength, and I've known your story. And for that, I thank you, because you are one of the people that have given me strength to keep fighting and trying to figure out how I can use my voice to, like I said, to change the world, to change perception, and to just keep going in the way that I know how and that I can.
Nice, huh? Yeah, Waneek, that's, listen, we have time for this. I should mention, Tara Sloan is a new series, debuts on June the 29th, and in a future episode, she will have Waneek as a guest. And I'm sure Continetta, your mom, will be a big part of the conversation with Tara, because your story and how you got to be this great Olympian and activist is otherworldly. But I thought I'd close with the connection of Tom Longboat, who is the subject of one of the profiles that Nicole has prepared. 1907, he wins the Boston Marathon. That same year, that summer, the bridge collapses at Quebec, and 33 Gananoque men who were working there are killed. And so why don't you pick up the 1907 connection, Waneek?
Well, I mean, that's where I'm from, and there's two crosses at each end of the highway in my community, and there's a light on each one of them that is for that lost man. And entire names were erased from our community because there were so many Mohawk men working on that bridge. And so after that, they made a rule that no more than 5 were allowed to work on any given job site. And from my understanding, I learned this actually from an engineering student. Engineers are now given these rings that they wear on their pinky finger, and that steel is from that bridge because it collapsed because of the engineers' lack work, not being diligent and meticulous in their measurements, and the bridge collapsed. So isn't that interesting that they get those rings when they graduate to remind them of their responsibility on how they're supposed to do their job well and how they're supposed to keep people safe. I kind of wish that we could all get one of those, in life to remind us every single day of our job and our responsibility. But, I think I have an invisible one. I have 3 little ones that stare at me all day. So.
And you have a scar on your chest where the soldier stabbed you at Oka, and you have a gold medal, replaced it within a decade. So dreams can happen. You're both bridge builders. You truly are. Miigwech, my greatest gratitude.
Yawa. Thank you so much.
Yawa.
So great. And again, a reminder, National Indigenous Peoples Day is Sunday, June 21st. We are back on Monday. The first black hockey player to play university hockey in the Maritimes, Bob Dawson, is a great advocate in the nation's capital, and he'll be joined by Lewin Hodges, who has some theories about minor hockey and where we're headed in Canada. He's a community engagement strategist or specialist with Rogers. That's Monday, 7 ET, 4 Pacific. We'll close with our song lyric, and today it's, "And to be a champion is more than luck and speed. It's power and freedom, the spirit of the wind." The great Buffy Sainte-Marie, the great Tanya Tagaq. For all of us, thanks for watching. So long for now.